has been officially 2 years with this beast, and in that time, well, I've kind of made some opinions about the M3, some good, some bad. So I'm gonna tell you guys all of it, and if I think you should get one, because again, owning this thing for 2 years, I've had a lot of different experiences, and don't get me wrong, this is an amazing car, but it might be a little overhyped considering what the internet says. So now let's just level set really quickly. This is a 2023 G80 M3. It is a competition and it is xDrive. And then just to highlight some key specs that this thing has the executive package, it has the carbon buckets, which we'll get into, and a few other things. And that brings me into the first topic that I want to discuss is options. Options for the G80 M3, because this is one of the first generations of M3 you can really kind of like spec out. Yeah, you could spec out previous M3s, but this one, it just had more options, more things to play with in terms of color, in terms of interior, in terms of like seats. So the first thing I want to talk about is, would I spec it the same way again? And should you guys spec your car similar to this or differently? So with that said, let's go through some of the specs that I absolutely love, I would spec again, and I think you guys should get if you're gonna get a car like this. The first one being the laser headlights, specifically the black or shadow line laser headlights. So now the G80 M3 is gonna get a little confusing because every year is gonna be a bit nuanced. So the newer M3s don't have these lights, they don't have laser lights, but if you're getting a previous one, like a used one, you know about the headlights, you can get the basic ones or the laser ones, which look way better, they operate way better, it has the nicer DRLs, has little blue inside here, and then these ones are blacked out, which just makes them look that much better, especially on the black car. And now let's go into the next option, which is one that I know a lot of people really care about, and that is the carbon bucket seats. Ugh, it's a weirdly controversial topic. A lot of people hate on the bucket seats, a lot of people love them. I think it started because a lot of people love the bucket seats, and then some people didn't get them, and then they started to hate on them because they felt like they were maybe missing out, and then maybe people just got sick of people overhyping the bucket seats, so they started to try to bring them down, saying that they're uncomfortable and things like that. Look, I've made videos about this M3 plenty of times, and I've talked about these bucket seats. I'll just say this again, the bucket seats are comfortable. They're totally fine. For reference, I'm 6'2", I'm over 200 pounds, I'm a pretty broad-shouldered guy, although my waist is pretty slim, so I actually fit pretty nicely in this seat. Now look, if you're a bigger person, you might struggle with this seat. I'm not gonna lie to you, and it might be uncomfortable, but if you do fit in them, once you're in them, they are comfortable. They are a pain to get in and out of. People will say you have to put your hand here and then lift yourself. I don't know, man. What I usually do is I put my hand right over here on the steering wheel, then I put one foot out and I lift my whole body out of the car. I know you couldn't see that, but yeah, it's a pain to get in and out of these seats, but once you're in them, and if you do fit in them, they are comfortable. And I mean, just look at them, guys. To me, these bucket seats absolutely make the car. I mean, just look at this angle, which is where the seats really shine. Like, look how amazing that is. This is just my opinion, but if you're gonna get a G80 M3 or a G82 M4, get the carbon buckets. If you can find one with it, they're so much better. Obviously, again, if you just genuinely can't fit in them, that's a whole other story, of course, but if you can, get them. I know they're not the most comfortable. People are like, well, I want to daily drive my car, I want the comfort seats. Guys, the bucket seats really aren't that bad, and there's more things about them that will help this car regarding value, which we'll get into a little later in this video. Just in my humble opinion, get the bucket seats if you can. You won't regret it later. Those are some of the two options you hear people talk about the most, the laser headlights and the bucket seats. Another option, which is actually not really an option, it's more of like the lack of an option, is the carbon roof. My car, because it's black, you can kind of hardly tell, but it does have the carbon roof. I did PPF this, so if you're wondering why I'm hitting my carbon, it is PPF. Anyways, I have the carbon roof. Now I say this is a lack of an option, and that's because with these cars, you could option a sunroof. If you option the sunroof, obviously you're not gonna get a carbon roof, you're gonna get a sunroof in its place. And look, I know some people will say a carbon roof is less practical, it's less fun than a sunroof, which, I mean, sure. But remember, guys, at the end of the day, these are car enthusiast cars. So a car enthusiast is what's gonna really drive the value of these cars in the future. So I don't wanna jump into the topic of value yet, but just know people will want the carbon roof because a carbon roof is lighter. It's going to keep the weight of the car more to the bottom, with obviously not having a heavy sunroof up top. And in my opinion, it just looks better. If you really want a sunroof, like, fine, but they're not even that nice of sunroofs. We'll quickly use my X5 here as reference, but this X5 has like a full panoramic roof. Like, it's actually nice in the summer when you open up that massive thing. It actually does look good and it is enjoyable. Whereas like a little sunroof on these cars, like it's not even that good. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Listen, if you're a sunroof person, get a sunroof, but I think just overall, the carbon roof is the way to go. So something that I personally would do 10 times over and something I would suggest you guys do, but you know, at the end of the day, it's your car. I'm just giving you my opinions. All right, the last option or spec that I really wanted to talk about was the interior, specifically the full leather interior. So my car now has the leather dash, it has the leather door cards, and then because I also got a colored interior, specifically the ivory, which we'll talk about later, I do get the color on the bottom of the dash. So it just makes the whole interior look so much better, so much nicer, so much more expensive and premium. A friend of mine and a fellow YouTuber had an M4 with the carbon buckets actually, but not the full leather, and his car inside just felt so much cheaper. Whereas having the full leather, it just makes being in this cabin feel so much more premium. I mean, the leather up here, the leather on the door cards, it just feels so nice. And then honestly, even having the ivory on the dash over here, again, it just feels a lot more premium. Anyways, there's a few other specs and options that this M3 has, which aren't really that worth talking about, like mDrive Professional. There is one that I'm missing, and sometimes, I'll be honest with you guys, I do regret not speccing it out from the factory. Although sometimes I also think about, man, like that option was very expensive. Was it worth adding like another 10K to the car? If you guys don't know what I'm talking about the carbon ceramic brakes. So obviously my car does not have them. I have the steel brakes, and that comes down to two reasons. One, like I said, the cost of them. That was like almost a $10,000 option when I was speccing this thing out brand new. I don't know, I couldn't really stomach spending another 10K just on brakes. And then the other thing is those carbon ceramics are very expensive to replace. Now, yeah, they should last longer, but when it comes time to replace them, they are thousands of dollars. And I didn't really want to deal with that. It just seemed like a massive expense and luxury I was gonna add to this car. Like, the bucket seats are great. Like, to compare, the bucket seats are only 4,500 bucks from the factory, and then you don't have to replace them. You get them once, you clean them and stuff, but like, you don't have to replace them. Whereas the carbon ceramics are like double the price of the carbon bucket seats, and you have to replace them. So personally, I didn't do it, but I do kind of regret it because it does help out with brake dust. One of the worst things about this G80 M3, by the way, these pads create so much brake dust. We can resolve that with some different pads, but if you get carbon ceramics, you don't have to really worry about that. And then honestly, I think it's just gonna drive the value of this car, which again, we'll get into value later, although I'm talking about it throughout this whole video. But I think that's the only option I really just think back and kind of second guess whether getting it or not. Everything else, I feel really confident about my decisions and I stand by it. The carbon ceramics are the one thing that I'm like, maybe I should have gotten them. All right, let's talk about a few other things and actually drive the car, because this, like I said, is an enthusiast car. It shines when you're driving it. Yeah, it looks pretty when it's sitting, especially the way I have it modified, which we'll also get into, but this car is meant to be driven. And I know that's ironic because a lot of people are gonna say, well, who are you to talk? Because you've owned it for 2 years and yet I've only put less than 6,000 miles on the car. That's something I got roasted for in the first time I made a video like this after owning the car for a year. Yes, I don't put too many miles on this car, but what I will say is I've still done a lot to this car. I've driven it on back roads. I've daily drove this car, like just commuting to and from work. I drove it with my family. I've drove it in the snow, literally like in the heavy snow. I've driven it in the rain. I've driven it in a whole bunch of different scenarios. So I know what the car feels like. Also, if you're wondering why I just generally drive that little, it's not that I drive that little. It's that this is just one of my 3 cars. Other than the M3, I also have that X5, which I drive most of the time because I'm usually with my family. And I also have my Supra, which is the car I drive the second most, if that makes sense. And that's because when I drive to work, mainly I'm driving the Supra because it's actually better on gas. So yeah, I didn't put 50,000 miles on my M3. I'm sorry for you guys. You can let me know how upset you are down in the comments below. But still, 6,000 miles in different circumstances and owning it for 2 years, I still have my opinion, so leave me alone. So in order to take the M3 out for a drive, we're gonna have to move this Supra. Can I just say, look how sick that M3 is. All right, so driving the M3. This is where this car really shines, because like I keep on saying, it's an enthusiast car. I know it's a sedan, but it's a sports car. And if you disagree with me on that, well, fight me. Before we even go, I gotta say, being inside a G80 M3 or a G82 M4 it's just a really nice place to be. Between these bucket seats and the full leather and just the overall interior, this thing feels not only sporty, but it feels luxurious too. And part of that has to do with, yeah, all the leathers and all that, but it also has to do with BMW's overall design. BMW really does make a great sports luxury car. Like, all this feels really nice. Even the center console over here, I do have the carbon trim in the interior. I have the M Performance Alcantara over here, which matches my steering wheel. You get the ambient lighting, which you're not going to be able to see. This interior is so nice that my wife actually gets excited to go out in this car, which says a lot. So this is just overall a really nice place to be. But like you keep on saying, this thing really shines when it's driving, and that's why this car might or might not be overhyped. All right, so went around that massive semi. Anyways, driving this M3, the car feels very balanced. If you guys didn't know, these M3s have about like 500 crank horsepower, but just like typical BMW, these things probably have that power to the wheels. Probably more so like 470 to the wheels. I don't know. I'm sure someone dyno tested a stock G80 M3 already. But anyways, the point is, this thing feels very balanced. The handling feels spot on. It feels like it handles on rails. Like, you point it and it goes, especially after I put it on some 295s on some Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires. Now, something that people do complain about a lot is they say that these cars feel numb. And yeah, they do feel a little numb. They're not the most engaging car to drive, but it's a modern car, and a car like this that has this much power from the factory, it better feel a little numb and not be that raw, or else people are gonna crash them. And I say that ironically because people still crash these M3s all the time, but we're not gonna get into it. But the point is, if these cars were as raw and as kind of unassisted as the older generations used to be, but with this power, it's gonna be a bad formula. So people keep on complaining that these cars are numb and all that. It's numb for a reason. But like I keep on saying, this thing is very fast. You punch it and it goes. Oh my God. It also brakes too. That's you definitely need that when you're going fast. Holy. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this thing does have xDrive, which really helps out the G80 M3. If you guys are gonna get an M3, personally, I think avoid the rear-wheel drive. If you want a manual, you really swear by a manual, one, consider an F80 or an E92. I think you get a better, more raw car with a better sound. Not with the F80, but with the E92. You can get your manual and you can save a lot of money. These cars, I think they live, or they should live, in all-wheel drive and automatic. I know some people aren't gonna like that, but that's just what these cars belong in my opinion. So that all-wheel drive system really helps this thing launch. And like I keep on saying, man, like, this thing handles amazingly. It hugs the corners. It feels so planted. If I just go, oh, doesn't help when you have bumps. All right. That doesn't look extreme, but I promise you guys, it feels extreme when you're feeling those G-forces. But man, this thing drives so amazingly. I know it sounds like I'm only talking this thing up right now, and it's like, well, you said there's some things you dislike. Honestly, it's hard to dislike the way that this car drives, but there is something you can easily dislike, and that's the sound. I wasn't lying, guys. These things, even with an aftermarket exhaust, they do not sound good. I know some people are gonna say, well, I have this exhaust on my M3, or I have this, or you have to do that, or you need a catalyst downpipe, you need a mid pipe. I don't care. They do not sound good. Compare this to an E92 M3 or even the N55 on previous BMWs. They sound so much better. These cars from factory with no exhaust modifications sound like a hybrid. They are so quiet. You obviously have two main catalytic converters. You have the secondary catalytic converters. Then you have two resonators, and you have a massive diaper of a muffler. X3M just drove by. I kid you not, I did not plan that, obviously, because how would I? And it sounded horrible. Anyways, look at this muffler. Look at that thing. It's freaking massive. Anyways, my car does have a large single mid pipe, so I got rid of the secondary cats, the 2 resonators, but I kept the muffler and I kept the primary cats for like emissions and all that. My car sounds better than it did stock, but it still does not sound good. The best sounding G80 M3 I've ever heard was Brian from Keys Motorsports' G80 M3. So that's something that these cars just, they do not do well. And you really shouldn't expect them to do well because it's just not their thing. But like I keep on saying, what it does do really well is the power and the tunability. Now, ironically, my car is stock. At least tune-wise. I do have an intake, I have some stuff, but I have no tune on this M3, and that's because I feel like this car doesn't need any more power. Another probably controversial thing to say. So many people get these cars and right away they slap a tune on them, they make them faster. Sorry guys, I gotta go inside because it's just way too sunny outside. I can't get any good light. But people tune these cars way too quickly and honestly unnecessarily because one, a lot of people can't handle the power. I know I can't, so I don't even bother to try. I'm just honest with myself. But in my opinion, these things have enough power for the road. They actually have too much power for the road. I think the sweet spot for a car that you're just genuinely gonna enjoy on the road is like 300 wheel horsepower. That way you can ring it out and not go to jail. This car, like we talked about, has 500. And that, it's a little bit too much because if you're on a road and you push it, you're going fast real quick. I've tested my car with all-wheel drive with these tires and obviously no tune. I got 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds. Absolute mayhem. So personally, I think this thing has more than enough power, but a lot of people tune them. So if you're into that, obviously the car is great for that. I personally am not. I tune my Supra. I think that car needs a little more power, so I give it a little more power. This car, I feel like it doesn't. So if you want to just get your car and you don't want to do anything to it, you're gonna have an amazing car because this car is enough. Like, it doesn't feel like it needs any more. Or if you want to get your car and you want to tune it because that's just what you enjoy, you want to race it, whatever it is, hey, more power to you. You're gonna love this car as well because the S58 in this thing is an absolute powerhouse. I gotta say, even without the carbon ceramics, this thing stops on a dime and it goes like no other. Oh my goodness. Okay, I should stop. The exhaust doesn't sound the best, but that intake sounds amazing. So I touched on it a few times there in those clips, but I want to talk about modifying this G80 M3 because as you guys can tell, mine is not stock. It's not heavily modified by any means, but I've done a few things to it here and there. And I'm sure if you're buying a G80 M3 or again a G82 M4, you probably want to know what it's like modifying these cars and what you're gonna experience if you get one. And let me just say, modifying these cars is honestly amazing. There's so much aftermarket support, so many wheels, so much carbon, so many things you can do to this thing, and you can really make this thing look so much better than a stock G80 M3. Because if I'm being honest with you guys, I didn't absolutely love the way that this car looked when I first got it. I actually started to really love it when I started modifying it, putting the front lip, putting the grille, putting the wheels, lowering it, and all that type of stuff. I mean, just the front end alone looks so much better now that it's modified. That CSL grille, the carbon ducts, the front lip, all that makes such a big difference. The reason why I got it is because I knew the potential of these cars, but when I got it and it was stock, I don't know, I just wasn't crazy about it. The same can't be said for my Supra, which I always loved, and then after modifying it, I loved it even more. But that's because the Supra is a nice sleek coupe, whereas the M3, well, it's undeniably a sedan. It's not huge, but it's not small. It has 4 doors. It's never gonna have that coupe look to it. And again, don't get me wrong, like, it looks amazing. There's some elements to it, like the arches, the hips in the back over here, the taillights, the headlights. It looks amazing, but it doesn't have that same look as a Supra. But again, after modifying, you can really make these things look amazing. I've done a few things to it, like all that carbon I mentioned. I did the side skirts, I obviously did the wheels. It is on AST lowering springs. I did the exhaust, I did the intake, I did a few things in the engine bay. I did the steering wheel, I did the Alcantara. That's really it for the interior. The interior really needs nothing in my opinion. I mean, if you want to count floor mats, I guess, but really this thing doesn't need much in the interior. The exterior, it needed a lot. So this thing looks way better now. Now I will say, if you guys are the type to work on your own car, this thing is actually pretty easy to work on. I was even a little intimidated myself, even though I've worked on other BMWs in the past. Carbon is carbon, it sticks on, it clips in, that stuff is pretty easy. But even just doing the exhaust or the intake or the springs is probably the biggest job that I did on this car. Not big stuff, I know people are gonna be like, it's easy, whatever, but that's modifications. I'm not rebuilding engines over here. It was actually easy. I thought it would be more difficult, but it wasn't bad at all. It wasn't much harder than doing like my F30 330i or doing the Supra. So if that's something you're concerned about, don't worry, because these cars are actually pretty easy to work on. However, if you're gonna take it to a shop, keep in mind guys, this is an M car and the M tax is very real on the parts themselves, or even when you take the cars to a shop. There are some things where, like, okay, it is justifiable for it to be more compared to like a Supra with the B58 or any other car. Like if you want to buy an intake for this thing, you need two, because it's a twin turbo. So you are kind of buying double the stuff. Also, if you want some downpipes, you don't need just one, you need two, because again, it's a twin turbo. Some people are gonna ask about maintenance, and I wish I can give you guys a better answer, but my car is actually still covered by BMW for maintenance. It's only needed oil changes, basic stuff. I had no issues with it. I'm not a good person to talk to about that because I only have 6,000 miles on it. But overall, just from what I've heard and what I know, the S58s are overall very reliable engines. They so far don't have like a notorious thing like every other M3. Like the F80 had the crank hub. The E92 had, the rod bearings. So in terms of like that and maintenance, I don't really know. It's a BMW. Go to FCP Euro and you can get your maintenance for pretty cheap there anyways. So you'll be fine. And so speaking of money, let's talk more about it. So this car, MSRP was about $97,000. If you guys can see that or even believe that. This also lists out all the specs. So if you guys are curious, pause your screen and check this out. But yeah, $97K for this car. Was it worth it in the end? Absolutely yes. This is a lot of car for that money. Like I keep on saying, this is not only a sports car, but it's also luxurious. I drive it to work, I drive it with my family. Like this car does it all, and it does it all very, very well. Not perfectly, but it does it all very, very well. Well, except for gas mileage. If you guys care about that, this thing gets horrible gas mileage. That's probably one of my biggest complaints about actually driving the car. But the point is, it does it very well. I think it's worth the money. Would I buy it again? Yes, I absolutely think that this car is worth $97K. I think they might have actually gotten more expensive because of all the tariffs and all that. But regardless, they are expensive cars. But the nice thing about them is they've actually been holding their value very well. And I kept on alluding to this in the beginning of the video. It depends on how you spec your car. So pretty much every G80 M3 is holding their value. Well, you know, relative. It doesn't hold the same exact value as it was new, but compared to like a normally depreciating car, it does hold its value. It actually holds it a lot better than a G82 M4. And although that's the case for most of them, some of them in particular are holding their value better. And now I gotta say, none of this was officially studied, researched. This is just things that I've noticed, things that I've heard in the community. So take this all with a grain of salt. This is not official financial advice by any means. But from what I've noticed, G80 M3s with xDrive hold their value way better than ones that are rear-wheel drive. We won't get into the why of it, but I'm sure you guys can assume. The other thing is the carbon bucket seats. So many people want the carbon bucket seats, or at least willing to pay more for the carbon bucket seats. So for that reason, cars with these seats, they just hold their value so much better. So yeah, some people don't want the seats, but some people swear by them. So, you know, enthusiasts drive the market. The enthusiasts want the carbon bucket seats, and they're gonna see the value and they're gonna pay for it. Not only that, they're also paying more for cars with carbon roofs. So if you get a sunroof, yeah, I'm sure some of you guys are gonna be like, I wanna open up my sunroof on a nice Sunday, and that's fine, but a real enthusiast isn't gonna want the sunroof because they don't want that extra weight. So they prefer a slick top, and even better, a carbon roof. Another thing that I don't have that does hold its value, carbon ceramics, same reason. enthusiasts just want that. And then another option that's helping these cars hold their value is the laser headlights. Not necessarily an enthusiast thing per se, but people really like them and people want them, so they're willing to spend more. And I want to clarify, when I say hold its value, I don't mean like I bought my car for 97K, it's still worth 97K. That's not what I mean. I mean like if you buy a 3 Series, a normal 3 Series for like 60K, in the same amount of time, it's gonna be worth like 40K. It's a big drop. But my G80 M3 specifically, with only 6,000 miles, will actually show you guys what KBB says it's worth, private and on a trade-in. It's very high. And if you ask me, that's holding value pretty well for a brand new car. Anyways, point is, take that into consideration. These cars do hold their value pretty well, especially if they're spec'd in a certain way. All right, so we already said a lot, and there's still so much more to say about the G80 M3. I can make this video an hour long, I'm sure, but I'm also sure you guys don't want to watch all that. But just even to wrap this whole video up, what do I think about the G80 M3? I mentioned in the beginning that it might be overhyped. Honestly, I do feel like this car is overhyped. Not that the car isn't amazing. I feel like so many people just want only G80 M3, and we almost get tunnel vision. There's so many other amazing cars out there, but you guys see on social media, on TikTok, on YouTube, and I mean, I really can't complain because I'm one of the people. A lot of people get G80 M3s and they say like it's the only good car out there. That's not the case. There's so many other amazing cars. Yes, this car does do everything, and it does everything not just well, but amazingly well, with the exception of gas mileage and the sound, which the gas mileage we can get over. The sound, it is what it is. Nobody's perfect, right? So yeah, this car is absolutely amazing. I love it. I don't regret anything. I even sometimes think like, if I can go back, would I get this car again? Not just the way that it is, just the G80 M3 in general. Absolutely. I've absolutely loved this car, and I know people are still gonna roast me about the only 6,000 mile thing. Yeah, it is what it is. Like I said, I have a Supra and an X5. Those are the cars I drive most of the time. I drive the G80 M3 when I want to have fun with it now. So if you guys are thinking about getting a G80 M3, honestly, I think you should do it. They're amazing cars, but do keep in mind, you know, the internet hypes them up a lot. There's other great options out there, so do your exploring, do some shopping. But if you do ultimately decide to get a G80 M3, you're gonna be happy with it. But anyways, I don't want to keep on ranting, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop it a like, hit that subscribe button. I have a whole bunch of videos out about the G80 M3. Everything that I've done to it, there's a video about it, so if you guys are interested in that, go check out my channel. But anyways, with that said, this video is pretty much done. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.